There's this huge number of people over 60 with generally a lot of time, a lot of resources, and a lot of us came of age when during a time of great social uprising during the 60s and 70s and 80s. And what we're wanting to do is help folks remember that time and bring that activism into our 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s.
Welcome to Zestful Aging, where I speak with influencers from all over the world who are contributing to the common good in all kinds of interesting ways. Contributing to the common good in even the smallest of ways is one of the scientifically proven ways we can age with vitality and deep contentment. I'm your host, Nicole Christina, psychotherapist and fellow Zestful Ager. My goal is to share optimism about aging and introduce you to guests who will inspire you to live with zest. And to find out more about the podcast, my web courses, and my book, Not Just Chatting, How to Become a Master Podcast Interviewer, hop on over to zestfulaging.com. And while you're there, sign up for my weekly email newsletter, The Insider, where you will get behind-the-scenes looks at upcoming episodes and other fun tidbits. And if you love the podcast, I'd be grateful if you shared it with your friends. Our music is courtesy of Judy Banker. Find out more at judybanker.com. And our technical director is Stephen Litweiler. Well, many of us are aware that the over 60 demographic is the fastest growing demographic here in the U.S. and all over the world. And we have tremendous power and influence. My guests today organize people over the age of 60 to work on climate and racial justice. Their work, the Third Act, is about mustering political and economic power to move Washington and Wall Street towards a fairer, more sustainable society and planet. And I'm very honored to be able to speak with Bill McKibben and Akaya Winwood today. Thank you so much for joining us.
What a pleasure. What a pleasure to be able to join you.
Thanks so much. I would just like to start with, for those of us who don't know what the Third Act is about, could you describe it a little bit more and talk about some of your initiatives?
Why don't you take it, Akaya, and I'll chime in.
So, there's this huge number of people over 60 with generally a lot of time, a lot of resources, and a lot of us came of age when during a time of great social uprising during the 60s and 70s and 80s. And what we're wanting to do is help folks remember that time and bring that activism into our 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s. If you will recall, that was when the Voter Rights Act of 1965 happened. The war against, the struggle against the Vietnamese War. This is when women's rights were, the women's liberation movement was in full swing, gay and lesbian, all of it. Whether or not one engaged in that political activity, it influenced how we saw ourselves in the world. So, and now we're asking our generations to once again step into this arena and to focus on climate and social justice, racial justice, and all that that entails. So the Third Act is about that. We want to invite folks back into we'll call it a joyful struggle. And let's make a world that allows for our great-grandchildren to thrive. So I'll leave that to Bill from here.
Well, Akaya's exactly right, Nicole. This is a really interesting generation, as she says. Our first act was really interesting. And we either participated in or at least bore witness to remarkable cultural, political, social transformation. I think some of us may have thought that we'd almost won some of those battles, The air started getting cleaner and you could swim in lakes and rivers again after the first Earth Day. And maybe our second act as a generation was a little more focused on consumerism than it was on citizenship. But now we emerge in our third act with, as Achaia says, lots of skills, lots of resources, lots of grandkids, and lots of problems. I mean, no kidding. We're on the edge of being the first generations that leave the world a way worse place than we found it. And that's not what anybody wants, We're starting to think about legacy, the way that young people are thinking about what their lifetimes are going to be like. And that's why people like Greta Thunberg are out in the lead talking about climate change all the time. Those of us of a certain age are starting to think what our legacy is going to be. And right now, it's not what we want it to be, so we need to organize to make it change. And people have begun to do that. The response has been remarkable.
I wanted to ask you about that, both of you, because as a psychotherapist, what I'm seeing, you won't be surprised to hear this at all, are people, and the word languishing has been tossed around a bit, feeling basically burnt out, apathetic, joyless. And I'm wondering if that's a challenge in some of your organizing.
Well, it is a challenge, although Achaia, who's just written a remarkable book called Leading with Joy, she can talk about that part. Let me just say, I think one of the things that people need is a sense of agency. How do I actually make a difference? And for older people, that comes in two forms, I think. One, we remain a politically potent and important bloc. As you know, we vote in extraordinary numbers. So we're either going to be an obstacle to change or a way to make change happen. We also ended up, fairly or not, with most of the money in this country. About 70% of the financial assets are in the hands of baby boomers or the silent generation. So one of our first big campaigns at First Act is getting people to pledge that they'll take their money out of and cut up their credit cards from the four big banks in America, Citi, Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, unless by year's end they've stopped lending money to the fossil fuel industry. And people are saying, you know what? I did not save my whole life just to have that money used to wreck the world my kids have got to live on. So people
Will you repeat that? The Citi, Chase, Wells Fargo, and
Bank of America.
Bank of America.
The four biggest banks in the country are also the four biggest lenders to the fossil fuel industry. Nicole,
and other ethical concerns.
That's right.
They're not known. Bank of America is not known for their fair lending practices either.
And that's right. Since the Paris Climate Accords were signed, those four banks have lent the fossil fuel industry $1 trillion. We can't go on like that. I mean, we have to change fast, and we can really help spur this change because of that power of the purse. But Achaia really should talk a little bit about that, because you use those words around joy and around languishing. And this is really her greatest expertise in her years as a kind of a leadership guru. I think that's the...
I was going to say queen.
I don't know about that.
I think joy may be the word she's used the most, yeah.
The other part that sort of piggybacks onto what you're saying, I think, is that the science really reinforces this idea of healthy aging is about finding purpose. Healthy aging, if we have purpose, if we feel agency, if we're leaving a legacy, that helps us feel better about our aging years. So what a great combination this could be. And this is.
Well, that certainly is our intention. I'm seeing people that are tired. And I don't know that it's so much languishing, but a lack of common purpose. So what we're trying to do is to say there is a common purpose here, and we have a contribution to make to it, which is the sustaining of this amazing planet that we happen to all be part of. And when I actually have been kind of shocked at how much interest there has been in this project, which is still in its very nascent months, even that's just been this outpouring of support and interest, and thousands of people are showing up for it in ways and they're saying, how can we help? What can we do? And please give us some ideas.
Give us a job.
Yeah. So it's anything but languishing. And
I see. You're seeing people with a hunger.
Absolutely.
That must be so gratifying, because this is how can we say, this is a major undertaking, right? Saving the world, essentially. That must be very heartening for both of you to see that people, even through COVID, even through exhaustion with politics, exhaustion with, fill in the blank, are coming to you saying, I want to work.
Well, I think in part it's happening because of those things as well, right? So if we've been in a pandemic for 2 years now, and people are feeling like, well, wait a minute, there's a wake-up call here. And it's, I'm tired. Yes, may feel like there's nothing going to change. But we're saying, actually, things will change, and they'll change because you'll change. And we can all be a part of it. One of the things I love best about Third Act is not just what we'll do, it's how we're doing it. So we're inviting folks to bring their best selves to this, to actually, let's be kind, let's be enthusiastic, let's bring our full hearts to the work. So it isn't just a theoretical, strategic movement, although there's plenty of space for that. This is also a movement of our collective heart, and people are eager for that.
Is there a spiritual aspect to this, Akaya?
I will say that there's a spiritual aspect of this for me. I don't assume that for anyone else, although my guess, Nicole, is that this is deeply spiritual work for a lot of people.
That makes a lot of sense. People are so starving to feel like they matter and they can affect change.
Yes,
and that they belong.
Yes.
There's a belonging piece that is crucial here.
Yep, and we are mammals, and
That's right.
we need to belong to our people, our group. Otherwise, I talk about this a lot in psychotherapy and other, places, that it's not just inconvenient not to belong, it's deadly.
One of the things that makes political participation difficult at the moment is that we live in a really angry age too. When if you're on some place like Twitter, or you're engaged in the political conversations, people are behave in ways that seem foreign to many of us, I think. And so without losing at all our kind of fierce commitment to change, we've been really trying to figure out how you can go about doing this in a slightly different spirit. We're happy to engage, say, in civil disobedience. I've been arrested a number of times, but the emphasis on civil as much as disobedient.
How are you finding your college students at Middlebury in terms of their enthusiasm for this kind of work?
Well, this is so interesting, Nicole. There's been this skepticism about older people among younger people, a lot of the okay boomer kind of stuff. And
Yes.
And for for decent reasons, you know. We haven't done all that we should over these last decades to build the kind of society that nurtures young people. These are kids who have to pay, you know, huge amounts of college debt in ways that we never did, for instance, or on and on and on. So there's a certain amount of skepticism about that, but I think, and I bet Akaya's seen this too, that even more there's a real hunger to have older people pitching in and working side by side. That collaboration is a big part of what we're talking about here. So, for instance, you know, in the autumn, a bunch of young climate leaders around the country called for demonstrations outside these banks. And they asked us to come join them. And it was such a pleasure to be out in the street across generations. Now, you know, there was a certain amount of, certain amount of dark humor. Somebody came to the one in Boston with a big banner that said "Fossils against fossil fuels." Okay, so, you know, you got to be able to smile at yourself a little bit. But,
Yes.
But that's but that intergenerational work is really something, and I think that there's a hunger for people to have elders acting like elders instead of you know, my least favorite bumper sticker of all time is that one you sometimes see on people's RVs as they're driving around Arizona or someplace, and it says, "I'm spending my kid's inheritance." That's the most, I mean, disgusting and sad comment that's almost possible to make. But I think that's how kids have internalized what too much of our generation is doing.
We've used up all the good stuff. Now
There's-
here are all the problems.
They're so grateful to see people wanting to engage. I know that Akaya works constantly with young leaders, and I think she probably has some of the same responses from people.
I actually do. They're wanting us to step, you know, our generations have been used to being in front of things, right? We're the leaders. We're the ones who determine what's going to happen and how it's going to happen. And it's time for us to step out from being in front and step into a more supportive role with these young folks, because they're leading in ways that are amazing, and they're doing it very differently. At the same time, they're also asking us to step with them, that they don't want to do this by themselves, and nor should they. I mean, in some ways, it would be a real relegation of our responsibility as elders to just say, okay, well, we blew it all. Go ahead and fix it, right?
Yeah.
So, but we need to be in a different relationship to it, to the work, right? So, Bill and I were talking recently about, all of a sudden because we took on the third act work, we're being older people in ways that we hadn't thought about it, or being perceived as older people, because our work has historically, both our work has been, you know, in fostering the leadership of younger people. So I'm having to, and many of us are having to, reorganize my idea of myself as elder.
Your identity.
Right. And as an elder, I have a different role to play. And I think that our generation's work now is to actually figure out how to be good elders and eventually ancestors. Now, there are tons of cultures who know a lot about this. And I think that that's one of the reasons this work is important internationally, because in the U.S. dominant culture, where youth is the only thing, or the biggest thing, a lot of us who are in our 60s and older haven't learned how to be elders.
I saw you have Robin Kimmerer on your board, and I imagine she has some things to say about how to be a good elder.
She does. And, you know, we've got an interesting, fascinating board of advisors who can bring a lot of different perspectives to the work. So this new role of eldering well is, this is a good place to practice.
What's it been like for you, Akai, to adopt that identity as an elder? How does that what's that experience been like? I mean, as a woman, I think, not every woman over 50 is saying, "Oh, yay, I get to be an elder."
Well, let's be clear. I am an elder only because people younger than I have called me that. It's not something one gets to just go like to Target and become an elder, right? You can't buy it. You can't just put on your old person outfit and say, now I'm an elder. It's actually an honor that the younger ones offer us when we get to a certain, I'll call it
I see.
wisdom, not
I see. You earn
necessarily
it.
age. You do. And so, yeah, it isn't something I'm going to put on my CV.
Bill, are there I know that you need to leave in about 5 minutes, and I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk to our audience about if this is the first time they're hearing about Third Act, what are the basic first simple steps that we can all do to move towards fairness and a sustainable society and planet?
Well, happily, we have tools now that make it much easier for everybody to get engaged. The pandemic there has to be a silver lining to every cloud. And one of the silver linings here is that all of us, to a person, now know how to use Zoom. And so we've been having these monthly all-in national calls. Bill Moyers was a guest on the last one. Jamie Raskin, the author who's led the impeachment prosecutions, the congressman from Maryland, will be the guest on the next one.
Wow.
And if you go to thirdact.org, you can sign up for these, but you can also, what we need you to sign up for are A, this pledge to take on the banks, and B, we're assembling what we're going to call a democracy force of people who are willing to volunteer to try and make the phone calls, send the emails, write the letters that will help defang some of these efforts at voter suppression and things. There are particular places in the country where no matter where you live, you can call into and help with the work that's necessary to keep our democracy on track. So these two projects around stabilizing the climate and stabilizing the democracy preoccupy us. But what we want is people coming from every perspective. So at Third Act, we're setting up a bunch of working groups that take advantage of whatever it was that people have spent their lives doing. So there's a group that's formed with people who are clergy people, business people, so on and so forth, because particular sources of expertise and particular sources of credibility are really, really helpful. But there's room for everyone, and we can put you to work. I think people often think, I just don't have a way in. I don't know how I can
it's too big. It's
affect
too big for
change.
me.
That's right. And truly, that's a reasonable insight. As individuals, it's very hard to affect these largest of questions. So the job for individuals is to be a little less individual. It's to join together with others in movements large enough to make significant shifts possible. And that's what Third Act is for those of us. We've been calling ourselves experienced Americans. So there you are.
You know what it strikes me too as, from where I practice, it's a real antidote to a culture of narcissism.
Yeah. And you said something earlier, Nicole, about we are mammals. We're herd animals, right? We need each other. And no one person everyone is necessary, and everyone is insufficient in and of themselves. So it requires all of us. If we're really going to shift things, it's going to require enough of us. Let's just say that, a critical mass, right? But an individual act in a lot of individual acts creates a wholeness that I will say creates a potential for something amazing to happen in the next 30 years. And
And
that's what we're betting on.
And I hear your passion and your just deep, deep commitment. This isn't just an initiative for both of you. It sounds like you've devoted yourself to this.
To me, there's nothing more important. There just isn't anything more important than creating the conditions for life on this planet. I just don't know anything else I could imagine doing other than this.
Nothing more important. And for you, Bill?
Well, this is, it's not just it's not just an obligation. It's a tremendous opportunity. We have the opportunity to get to work side by side with young people to make change of the kind that needs making. And we have the capacity to do it. People who've reached this stage in life have lots of skills, lots of connections, lots of resources. And finally, we have, some of us, some time, And so those things together should enable us to be a dangerous bunch of people who can get a lot of stuff done. And that's the hope.
Well, and there's another piece here. It's really fun.
Amen.
Right? This has been so much fun. And that's,
goodness.
Again, part of the how.
Amen.
Bill McKibben and Akaya Winwood, thank you so much from the Third Act. You can find out more at thirdact.org. Getting involved in the joyful struggle. Thank you so much, both of you, for your time and your work and your passion. And I'm so excited to share this.
Thank you. Been a great conversation. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much for joining us on Zestful Aging. If you like the podcast, please share it with some of your friends. If you think decluttering could help you feel better and you could use a little assistance with that, check out the online course I've developed with professional organizer and designer Carrie Luderin. It's called Too Much Stuff. And Too Much Stuff is different from other courses or articles or guidance you may have used up. We give you clear steps to deal with the clutter and the tools to help you face the overwhelming feelings and the emotions that come up when we're going through our clutter. And a lot of those emotions are just feeling anxious or guilty or just basically flooded with a lot of different confusing feelings. The course is really practical. It's realistic. The lessons are short and punchy, and they're really manageable. We're not trying to set you up for some long exploratory, super in-depth, burdensome experience. We want something really helpful for you right now. We all need help with our anxiety. So being surrounded by more calm and less chaos can really help. So now's a good time to clear out the clutter so we can focus on what's really important in our lives. So find out more at zestfulaging.com. You'll see more about this under the web courses tab. If you have any questions, just shoot me an email at zestfulaging@gmail.com. Thanks so much. And stay tuned next week for another interview with a fascinating and inspiring guest.